Shout out to everybody in the building. Can y'all hear my voice out there? Let me know if y'all can hear me out there, guys. Let me know. Long time no see. Most definitely in the building. Can y'all hear me out there? Let me know if y'all can hear me out there. Shout out to everybody in the building, man. We got Trump getting into it with the Pope, guys. That's crazy. Trump is into it with the Pope of all people in the world, man. That's crazy, man. Shout out to everybody in the building, man. Can y'all hear me out there? If you can hear me out there, make sure you type me some in the comments. Let me know that you can hear me out there, man. We got some things going on. You know what I'm saying? What's up? It's Monday, guys. You know what I'm saying? It's Monday. We in the building, man. What's up? What's up, y'all? Can y'all hear me out there? Somebody type something in the chat. Let me know you can hear me. All right, we got to make a move and say, I can hear you. All right, salute, man. Hell, we can hear you. Okay, MJS. It's a lot going on, guys. We've been trying to have peace talks with Iran. They just ain't working, man. We sent J.D. Vance over there and basically a team of negotiators to go over there and talk to them. They wasn't trying to hear none of that. You know what I'm saying? U.S. blames it on Iran. Iran blames it on us. But either way you look at it, it's a stalemate, guys. Shout out to that gift, man. Shout out to the love. What's up, Candy Cane? What's up, MJS? What's up, Making Moves? Yeah, it's a lot going on, guys. Make sure you guys are double tapping that screen if you in the building. Yeah, man, we most definitely finna get to it, man. You know what I'm saying? We finna get to it. Hold on. Get that right. We most definitely gonna get to it. Shout out to all the people that can hear me. What's up, Westside? Yeah, man. It's a lot going on, man. It's getting crazy out there. I'm telling you, Making Moves day by day, man. It's getting crazy. As I don't know if any of the rest of y'all seen it, but it tripped me out to see that Trump into it with the Pope of all people. Pope Leo, you know what I'm saying? Him and Trump are exchanging words, man. You know what I'm saying? They most definitely got something going on. I'm just saying. I was shocked. I'm like, man, you getting into it with the Pope too. With the Pope of all people, you into it with the Pope too. Oh wow. Shout out to Ms. Pooh for being a member for the last 19 months. She says, welcome to Everything News. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, man. Absolutely. Yep, Pope Leo has some words for his tale. Absolutely. He has some words for old Trumpy Trump. You know what I'm saying? Pope wasn't playing with him. But we're going to start here with the bold warning that Trump just issued to Iran, guys. And then we'll most definitely see what Iran had to say about the whole situation. Shout out to Candy Cane for that gift. Most definitely appreciate you. Yeah, man. They ain't seeing eye to eye right now. You know what I'm saying? They most definitely not seeing eye to eye. Shout out to Ms. Pooh for that 5. I appreciate it. Hold on, let me give you a heart and a like. You know what I'm saying? If you have not, make sure you're double tapping that screen, guys. That's how you hit the like button. You know, it's greatly appreciated. It most definitely helps out the channel as we're just now getting started. So if you just got here, you ain't missing nothing. We just now getting started right now, man. Make sure you guys, if you're on a mobile device, you're double tapping that screen, or you can click the 3 dots in the right-hand corner and hit that thumbs up. It most definitely helps out the channel. Let's get the likes all the way up. Shout out to everybody in the building. Let's kick this thing off with hearing the warning that Trump just sent to Iran, guys. Let's go.
A few hours, the U.S. blockade on the Strait of Hormuz goes into effect. Meanwhile, President Trump making it clear to another adversary, China, about the consequences if they play ball with Iran.
I hear news reports about China giving the shoulder missile.
This is what Trump had to say.
Anti-aircraft missile. I doubt they would do that because I have a relationship and I think they wouldn't do that. But maybe they did a little bit at the beginning, but I don't think they would anymore. No. But if we catch them doing that, they get a 50% tariff, which is that's a staggering amount.
Trump say he's going to raise tariffs on China.
Committee Chair Tom Cotton joins us now. Senator, you saw that over the weekend, that China evidently is going to give a missile defense system, possibly, and shoulder man pads over to China.
Thank you, Candy Cane.
It seems directly that's not going to fly.
Yeah, Brian, I can't confirm or deny that specific report, as the president didn't either. But obviously, we would not tolerate such behavior from the Chinese. And I'm confident, as the president said, they understand that, and that senior officials have made that clear to Chinese counterparts. China really needs to engage here on Iran, a terrorist state, trying to close the Strait of Hormuz, because China gets the lion's share of the oil coming out of the Middle East. Now that we've imposed a blockade on the strait on all ships, if all ships don't get out, China is really the one that's going to face the brunt of the pain.
And that means if China sends a tanker in, they're going to be told, turn around, you can wait here, but you're not going forward. This is a stare down.
Yeah, it's really akin to what we've done with Venezuela for several months. The president's point is very simple to Iran. Either all ships come out or no ships come out. And
so they battling over the Strait of Hormuz, guys. You know, a very important
that's where Iran gets the vast majority
all way. You might as well say
how it supports its military and its terrorist proxies throughout the region. So this puts them now not just in a military vice, but in an economic vice as well.
With the progress we're making, do you think on some level the administration regrets the ceasefire?
No, I don't think so. I think the president has bent over backwards. Now, going back 9 years, trying to allow Iran to take very simple, very easy steps of turning over their nuclear materials, shutting down their nuclear infrastructure, stopping their support for terrorism. Onerous demands, these are something we expect from any civilized nation.
Right.
And the president's going to continue to try to find a way to meet those demands, but he's going to keep the military and economic pressure on Iran until they do.
They got about 100 launchers left, so they're hiding them, and about 1,000 ballistic missiles left. With this mosaic,
1,000 ballistic missiles, guys.
When Saddam Hussein was taken out in 26 days, they said he had so much power.
Let's take time to double tap that screen, guys. Get the likes up. Double tapping the screen. If you're on a mobile device, that's how you hit the like button, or you can click the 3 dots in the right-hand corner, hit that thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you are new. This is everything we have going on right now in the news, guys, when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Trump and J.D. Vance, and also when it comes to Trump and the Pope.
You can decapitate a regime. They didn't want to be decapitated. To get the Ayatollah, they have 32 provinces running their own war. Is it possible they don't know how bad things are because they have their own 32 separate supply chains? They have very little communication.
They know how bad things are and they know the risk. It is true that it's hard for Iran's leaders to communicate. As Pete Hegseth said a couple of weeks ago, they can't, not only can they not command and control, they can barely communicate. They're afraid that if they turn on their phones, that they may get a bomb dropped on their head. That said,
wow,
every military line of effort in this campaign is either on time or ahead of schedule. Their missiles, missile launchers, the drones, the Navy, the Air Force. That's the consistent message I hear from my conversations with senior administration officials and from the briefings and the hearings that we get in Congress.
So the Wall Street Journal today has a report that we're looking to take some limited action during the ceasefire. If so, what kind of action do you think that we need to take that wouldn't last another week?
Well, if Iran follows through on its threat this morning to target ports in the region for our friends in places like Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates,
including the Red Sea,
obviously, we're not just going to sit back idly and let that happen. We're going to re-engage in part to help protect our troops and our ships in the region, and help protect our friends as well.
Stockpiles. Are you concerned about our stockpiles, from interceptors to munitions? We heard about shortages during the Biden years with supplying Ukraine.
I've been concerned about this for years. I've worked on it for a long time in Congress. It's getting better under the Trump administration. Pete Hegseth and the Deputy Secretary, Steve Feinberg, are working very hard to accelerate.
He says it's getting better, guys.
Interceptors and missiles in places where they're made, like Camden, Arkansas. So it's improving, but we still have a lot to do to gain. I'm not concerned about what it means for the conduct of this operation. I'm more concerned about what it means for the future. That's why we have to do more faster.
Would you like to see another round of talks that lasted 21 hours and didn't yield any results?
Until Iran shows that it's serious.
MJS say he's lying.
Like turning over its nuclear materials, no longer supporting terrorism, no longer trying to terrorize the Strait of Hormuz. I don't see the talks are making much progress. When they're ready to get serious, perhaps when they felt more economic pain, more military pain, maybe they want to re-engage at that point.
All right, Senator, thanks so much. Good to see you in New York. Good to see you face to face.
Good to be here.
All right, so we got somebody down there says, man, this battle is far from over. What's up, Miss T? I most definitely agree, man. We got a long way before this thing is over with. All right, so it says Iran issues warning about Trump's Hormuz Strait blockade. We supposed to be blockading the Strait, guys. Iran says that's not a good idea, guys. As Trump issued a warning, they issued a warning back. Check this out.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinn. Continuing to follow the very latest developments as we take a live look at the marine traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. This comes as Iran is now responding to President Trump's order for a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran's Revolutionary Guards is saying that any military vessels attempting to approach the Strait of Hormuz will be considered a violation of the 2-week U.S. ceasefire and be dealt with harshly and decisively. The guards in a state.
Now, that's the crazy thing about this ceasefire, guys. I don't know if y'all paid attention to it, but it's been a 2-week ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. The crazy part is Iran has still been dropping drones, basically, or launching missiles at other places over there where it's at, basically saying that the ceasefire was between them and the U.S. and not their counterparts over there where they are, causing a lot of confusion over there as well, guys. It's crazy, man. This thing is most definitely far from over.
Statement reported by Iranian state media saying that the strait is under the control and, quote, smart management of Iran's Navy, adding that it is, quote, open for the safe passage of non-military vessels in accordance with specific regulations. To talk more on this, I'm going to bring in the president and CEO of JINSA, Michael Makovsky, to talk more on this. And as always, Michael, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday to you too as well. And I did want to start off with the new development, which is Iran responding to President Trump's announcement that he is directing Navy vessels to create a blockade at the Strait of Hormuz. Iran now saying that they're going to treat any military vessel as a threat. What can you share with us about the latest statement put out by the IRGC and what this could potentially mean?
Yeah, I think it's worth just reminding everybody that the purpose that the ceasefire was predicated on the idea that the Strait of Hormuz would be open, and of course the Iranians immediately violated that.
It's crazy.
Ships aligned with them, or which apparently were paying them.
Are the Iranians not making it clear that they don't care what America says? They gonna do what they want to over there where they are, guys. It's crazy, man. Yeah, real talk. Shout out to Miss T for being a member for the last 18 months. She says, keep going. This is what people really need to know about. Some listen, some don't. Just keep putting it out for those for those of us that do. Pound proud of you, man. You already know what it is, Miss T. I'm most definitely keep putting the information out, man. Whether people choose to believe it or not, I put the information forward. Therefore, people can go do their own research. They can go deep dive or whatever. I'm only going to touch on it on the surface level. I'm not one of those channels that goes way down deep over here, over there. None of that. I just expose what's being exposed to me, and I leave it up to the people that want to go do deep dives. They can go do their own deep dive. Shout out to you. Thank you for being a member for the last 18 months. What's up, KK?
A toll of up to about $2 million a tanker to get through. So they already violated the ceasefire. So it's kind of amusing, to say the least, for them to say that if our military ships go through, that it would violate the ceasefire when it's just the opposite. But I think President Trump is saying, okay, Iran, if you're not going to allow ships to go through that you don't approve of, we're not going to allow any of your
real as they come,
and you'll won't be getting any of your revenue, and that affects Iran. But we also should understand that it affects China, because about 90% of Iranian oil exports are sold to China at a discounted rate. So there could be a standoff, or the United States could choose to escalate and say, okay, we've been blocking them, but we might actually go after the Karg Island, which is where almost all their Iran's oil exports go through. Or we could offer, as General Jack Keane on Fox has raised, we're going to take over, we're going to destroy Carg Island if you don't give us access to your nuclear material.
We've also see the Strait of Hormuz is most definitely important, guys. A lot of oil is shipped through there. And Iran knows that. That's why they playing this game with the Strait, guys. That's why it's so important to Trump and other countries. Because a lot of things are shipped through the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran basically is controlling that. And if they don't allow anything through, that means there will be a shortage on a lot of things that are important to a lot of countries. That's why the Strait of Hormuz is so important. That's why you see it. If you've been paying attention, that's why you see them talking about it so much, guys. It's a very important spot. I'm just saying.
Heard the phrase a point of inflection when it comes to what is happening right now, particularly with the Strait of Hormuz. As we see this now escalating, President Trump ordering the blockade there, Iran responding, saying it's going to treat any military vessel as a threat. Are we potentially at another tipping point?
No question. I mean, I think President Trump made a good faith effort. I mean, we send our vice president to these talks. That's a pretty major thing, development to happen. And obviously we should. And I think the Iranians, my sense is they're used to U.S. presidents and just talking and talking. And, this will be the first round and they want to drag things out. They keep forgetting, I think, they're dealing with President Trump, who's different than Biden or Obama. And he says, look, I gave you a chance. And okay, come back to us if you agree to our terms. And if you don't, which I don't think they will, I don't think the Iranians are planning to, then there could just be a standoff in Hormuz, or as President Trump suggested in his Truth Social post, that we'll finish the job a bit more, meaning I think we'll hit more Iranian economic targets, maybe more military targets, but more economic targets to hurt the regime and strangle them economically, and also therefore make it more likely that the people will eventually bring them down. And then the only last question will be, what about the nuclear material?
And let's talk about that, because you mentioned Vice President J.D. Vance traveled to Pakistan in good faith to sit down at the table and try and come to some sort of agreement. They spoke for.
And let me let y'all know, when J.D. Vance went over there, it didn't go so good, guys. It didn't go so good. We most definitely got that coming up next with basically what happened. But I can tell y'all, talks were not successful.
21 hours. And, and I was sharing with our viewers what Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson shared regarding the red lines. And you mentioned one of them, all of this having to do really with the nuclear program and the enrichment facilities. That's the red line that either side is not willing to give up on. Is it even realistic to expect any other future negotiations, as Iran is refusing to give this up?
I think it's unlikely. It's possible, of course. I mean, you could say the Iranians will say, okay, we'll let the ships go through the Hormuz. That would be, so let's have another conversation. I can see that as a possibility. But if fundamentally, as Vice President Vance said, they're not willing to give in on their nuclear program, which means not only do they have to give up what they've enriched, but they can't have any nuclear program. And that means giving us access, kind of like what we had with Libya, where we were able to extract the nuclear material and destroy the nuclear facilities.
Make sure you guys are double tapping that screen if you're on a mobile device. That's how you hit the like button, by double tapping the screen on your mobile device or clicking those three dots and hitting that thumbs up, guys. I'm trying to get the likes to 100. Everybody who haven't hit that like button, most definitely double tap that screen if you don't mind.
It's just hard for me to see that this regime will ever concede on that point. So then the question is, what do we do about it?
Right, and I did want to share this. This is from Fox News correspondent Trey Ying saying no U.S. negotiators remain in Pakistan following 21 hours of talks. Iran still unwilling to make key concessions on enriched uranium and the Strait of Hormuz. So, Michael, as we look ahead, really, we're kind of at a standstill here. Where does the United States go from here?
Yeah, so there are a few options. We can maintain a blockade of Iran of the Hormuz, which means eventually, making sure that no Iranian oil gets out while clearing the Hormuz of any mines and so on. We could then move forward and say we've cleared out.
I'm glad he said that. That touched on another point for me. The Strait of Hormuz is most definitely booby trap, guys. They got underwater mines and all type of things over there, meant to destroy ships. Put holes in them, make them sink. Of certain vessels that come through that they feel should not be there. That's crazy. His booby trapped.
The Strait of Hormuz, and now Saudi and Emirati oil could get out, but we're not allowing the Iranian oil to get out. I may add that my organization, JINSA, we recommended early January that we should blockade the Iranians and strangle the regime economically. So I'm glad to see the administration is doing that now. We could go further and say we'll either take over or destroy Karg Island, which is where like 90% of Iranian oil exports go through, where they're piped to and then unloaded from. We could do that, and that would be real lasting damage on this regime, because then they'll be completely undermined economically. They won't be able to pay for almost anything after that. But it also could hobble any post-regime government, so that's the risk. We could take out more, as President Trump suggested, more economic and energy facilities inside Iran, again, to strangle the regime. And then I think we could do more against their ballistic missiles, which we didn't finish completely. And then I think the ultimate issue is the nuclear, and that I don't have intelligence of that, but it's certainly the most risky thing we would do, which would be to go to where we believe they have stored nuclear enrichment material. Maybe that's under rubble that we bombed in June, and secure that perimeter and take that out. But it's certainly risky. And I sense that President Trump is obviously wary of doing something like that, but we could do that. And there is
it's crazy,
I just don't know whether that would be something obviously we would do with our Israeli partners. I just don't know. If we don't do that, we could end the war and keep the blockade on and just say, you do anything on the nuclear front, we're going to come in and destroy you.
We're talking about Iran, but Iran is also continuing to use its proxies as a part of this ongoing war. Hamas, Hezbollah, even the Houthis. And I did want to share this live look right here of Beirut, Lebanon. This also comes as Israel and Lebanon are expected to sit down at the negotiating table in Washington on Tuesday to talk about peace and also scale back strikes against Hezbollah, really looking towards cementing a lasting peace between the two nations. What can you share with us about these talks and what might be discussed?
Yeah, if I may add, so I think Hezbollah, which is a proxy of the Iranians, they made a couple mistakes. They attacked Israel on October 8th. Of 2023 after Hamas did, which led eventually to their severe degradation and all the killing of all their top leaders. And then they recently attacked again, giving the Israelis, another reason to go in and really weaken Hezbollah. You have this interesting dynamic here where it's clear that the Lebanese government wants Hezbollah to go, because they know there's only war. The main reason why their country has been engulfed in war now.
I feel the same way, MJS.
The Iranian proxy that is starting this fight with Israel. So you can see where, in a way, that you have an alignment of interest between Israel and the Lebanese government. They both want Hezbollah to be decimated and gone. So, it could be that this could be a great moment. There could be a moment here, possibly, for some sort of normalization. but with the Lebanese. But ultimately, that's going to depend on Israel really weakening Hezbollah even more.
Michael, before we let you go, I mean, there are many different aspects that we're continuing to monitor and keep a very close eye on. Are there any particular details or events that you're looking ahead to that you would want to share with our viewers?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think first of all, I think the Israelis, keep watching Lebanon. Obviously, the ceasefire or the so-called ceasefire with Iran is giving the Israelis military a bit of a break so they can focus more on Lebanon. To me, the issue is on Hormuz. Does things escalate as we talked about, and does the United States decide to take it to use this to resume the war? Because he only did a ceasefire; it's a pause, and the Iranians haven't honored it. So maybe that if U.S. and Israel resume their bombardment of Iranian conventional military facilities, and then will we go after some of their economic facilities? And then the big question to me to pay attention to is the nuclear. Do we try to extract the nuclear material and destroy something that doesn't get a lot of press attention, which is Pickaxe Mountain, which is a relatively new facility, which was not bombed in June because it's more deeply buried under a mountain than Fordo, and has not been inspected by international inspectors. Do we try to go after that, or do we decide and say, look, we're just going to watch it, and if the Iranians do anything,
I think we should get from over there. That's what I think.
Focus on Pickaxe Mountain and nuclear material, and then of course the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, Michael, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here.
All right, so that was some of what's going on over there. You heard him touch briefly on J.D. Vance, guys. J.D. Vance recently, him and the team of other people recently went to, I think it was Pakistan, to have negotiations with Iran, which turned out not so good, guys. Nothing was accomplished. Here go a little bit more on that whole entire situation and what J.D. Vance had to say about his peace talks. Let's go.
21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on, and we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms.
They said we ain't accepting nothing, guys. Can we get y'all to double tap that screen? Let's continue to get the likes up, guys. We are 50 away from 100. Let's double tap that screen. Share out the live. Let them know we over here live on Everything News, guys, with updates on what's going on in Iran, guys. Double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or click the three dots in the right-hand corner. Hit that thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated. Shout out to everybody out there.
This delegation has now left Islamabad after unsuccessful marathon peace talks with Iran. Pakistan, though, vows it will continue to mediate between Washington and Tehran, quote, in the coming days. Iranian media reports Tehran is in no hurry to get back to the negotiating table. That's according to a source close to the Iranian delegation. And until the US agrees to what Tehran deems a reasonable deal, they say the Strait of Hormuz.
This is a depiction of the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, CNN's Nick Robertson with more now from Islamabad.
So this is where we just heard from the vice president. No deal on the talks with Iran over 16 hours, an absolute marathon session through the night.
He said, well, J.D. Vance said 21 hours, and they still didn't come to an agreement, guys. It's not looking good. They projected like 3-4 weeks until this thing is over. I don't think it's going to be over anytime soon.
Here in the center of Islamabad, it is dawn now. When the talks began on Saturday, it was late afternoon, and we've quite literally witnessed the sun go down and then the sun come up again. And what the vice president has said is that Iran, he doesn't believe, is giving that fundamental core agreement about its nuclear aspirations. He didn't say what happens next. He didn't talk about a specific end to the ceasefire. He didn't say if it's a return to war. But what he said the United States has done is given Iran its final and best offer. The ball, it appears, is in Iran's court to come up with answers now, but it hasn't been able to through this marathon session of talks. The vice president also saying that through the night, he continually kept President Trump briefed and updated. He said that he'd come into these talks positive, but fundamentally, the vice president coming in looking, he hoped, to get a relatively quick solution. The Iranians, with a much larger delegation and a much different negotiating style, coming into these talks with perhaps the aspiration, as they have done in the past, of talking, drilling down, getting what they wanted. Fundamentally, also, the Iranians believe that they still hold cards, that they can still control the Strait of Hormuz. And to them, that is something that is leverage, real leverage, they believe, and that it could get more than they were offered here in Islamabad.
What else have you learned about these
It's
talks?
crazy.
Well, Victor, the entire region is sort of on a knife edge at the moment following the failure of those talks. And the question, of course, that everybody is asking is, what does this mean? What comes next? Does this mean that the ceasefire is effectively over? Does this mean that we are going to see a resumption of fighting? That clearly a huge source of anxiety and concern here in the region. There are technically still 10 days left.
JD Vance, guys, leaving.
And Iran's foreign minister earlier had said, you know, we never expected this to be settled in one session. The fact, even that the talks happened, Victor, the highest level talks to take place between the U.S. and Iran since the revolution in 1979. The fact that they lasted 21 hours, that they were, by all accounts,
21 hours, guys.
All of that is a sort of positive indication, and yet the fundamental chasm that exists between the two sides, the complete lack of any coherent overlap, particularly, as you mentioned, on the issue of uranium enrichment and Iran's nuclear program, and particularly, of course, on the Strait of Hormuz. That is leading to real death.
Can we get 40 more likes, guys? If you're in the building and haven't hit that like button, double tap that screen. It helps out the channel, guys. Anybody on the mobile device, double tap your screen or click the three dots in the right-hand corner, hit that thumbs up. This is what went on with the conversation, the peace negotiations that took place with Iran that took 21 hours, and that basically gave us no results, guys, except for a big fat no.
Out that it will be possible for the two sides to find any common ground. Of course, the whole world is now waiting and watching to see what President Trump will do when he wakes up this morning, how the U.S. will respond, and whether this ceasefire will continue, whether we might see another round of talks. And until we get some sense of the direction that this is moving in, you will continue to see, particularly here in the Gulf, where the Strait of Hormuz is such a crucial issue, a large degree of anxiety and concern. Although I will say, when you talk to people here, there were not high hopes for these talks. There was always a recognition going into these talks here in the Gulf that it was going to be a tall order for these two sides to agree on these very thorny and complex issues, Victor.
So let's bring in now Errol Lewis. He's the political anchor for Spectrum News and host of The Big Deal with Errol Lewis. All right, Errol, good morning to you. Let's start in the Middle East. Do you foresee that there are near-term political consequences of this inability to reach a deal in Pakistan domestically?
Good morning, Victor. There are near-term, but it depends on how you define near-term. We have elections, important midterm elections this year. Israel has elections for its Knesset in October. I think this is the last opportunity, the last political window to try and sort of put a bow on this and say this was a success or this was a failure. The voters in both countries will have the last word, but this is the last chance for these administrations to prove that this entire adventure was worth it, as the entire global economy, of course, is hanging in the balance.
Yeah, and we saw the economic numbers this week, the highest inflation rate, annual inflation rate for nearly 2 years in the U.S. Consumer confidence is low. Specifically on the vice president.
I can't lie, 21 hours of negotiating and no agreement was made, and that whole 21 hours was horrible, guys. Yeah, it was horrible. I'm 21 hours, no agreement, no nothing, still at a stalemate. This thing is far from over, guys.
Because he was the new element here. We'd seen Kushner and Witkoff in their engagements with the Iranians before the start of the war. Is there any residual political impact for J.D. Vance specifically going in 21 hours and not coming out with a deal?
Well, he was an interesting choice to lead the delegation in the first place. We know that he was a skeptic about the entire operation. And in his political past, he had specifically warned against doing exactly what this administration has now done. So to have him alongside a number of, frankly, amateurs, people who are not diplomats, who are not trained in diplomacy, who don't have the personal and professional experience and contacts to pull off something as delicate as this kind of a ceasefire conversation, he was kind of working, it was all going to be uphill no matter what. So I personally am not that surprised that he came home empty-handed. It's going to take a little bit more work and probably some work by professional diplomats to try and get the ceasefire that the United States wants.
And I acknowledge that as I ask you this question, we don't know the answer. You don't know the answer, but I think everyone's waiting to see, well, what will President Trump do now? He did on Friday say that if there is no deal, that they're going to continue, the U.S. is going to continue attacks. And then on Saturday said, well, the U.S. has already won.
Well, y'all do remember, before this 2-week ceasefire, Trump said that he was going to wipe out the whole country. Drop a 1 down there if y'all remember that. And then, basically, they started talking about a ceasefire in 2 weeks. But before the ceasefire, Trump said he was going to wipe out the whole country. It was going to be nobody left. It was going to be catastrophic. That's what Trump said, before they issued this ceasefire for 2 weeks. Trump said he was going to blow Iran to smithereens in so many words. Anybody down there remember that? Drop a 1 if you remember that before they did this ceasefire.
So he doesn't care if there's a deal. What does he now say to the American people that there is no deal?
Some version of declaring victory and coming home is really the only option for this administration. It's only a question of when they will do it, how they will do it, and whether or not more bombs will fall and more lives will be lost before that happens. But that is the inevitable conclusion. This president said from day one what he knew was the only political
oh, wow. Only one person down there knew that? Well, y'all need to start keeping up with the news, because Trump most definitely said before they did this ceasefire that he was going to blow the whole Iran to smithereens. It would be catastrophic, something like they have never seen before. Basically saying there would be nobody left after he did what he did. I'm telling y'all better pay attention.
Politically acceptable answer for the American people, which is to say that this was worth it. It was important. It had to be done, and we won. He said he began saying that on day one, Victor, and the facts haven't changed that. And that politically, I think he and the Republican Party, that's all they can say. There's no other possible conclusion. The only question is again when they're going to accept that reality and get the best deal that they can and come home.
And what's your view of where we are now?
Well, clearly this first round did not work out, and perhaps there won't be any other rounds. I wrote prior to these negotiations that the most likely outcome actually was that there would be a no-deal new status quo, one in which the U.S. nevertheless pulled out of this war. The Iranians continue to control the Strait of Hormuz. There's no agreement, but a new status quo is reached in which the two sides, the U.S. and Iran, do not go back into war, and then the question is what the Israelis will do. And the reason I wrote that is because the two sides are still too far away from each other on some of the core issues. The nuclear is, of course, one of them. That's the only one that J.D. Vance spoke about. But another critical one is the position on Lebanon, in which the Iranians are insisting that the ceasefire has to encompass Israel and Lebanon as well. And so far, it appears that the United States is pushing back quite hard against that, because the Israeli position is that they're going to continue to bomb that country, regardless of what happens between the United States and Iran.
Hold that thought. I'm going to come back to that. Let me just put to you what Middle East correspondent for The Economist, Greg Karlstrom, notes about these talks. And he says, on the positive side, this is the highest level diplomatic engagement between America and Iran since 1979. There is still time for another round. He also points to major constraints, including too many issues to get through in 10 days. And that, of course, will be the end of this current ceasefire, 2-week ceasefire. Significant psychological gap, he says, between the two sides, with each side believing the other is under pressure. How much do you think that perception gap is now shaping the trajectory of these US-Iran talks? And I wonder whether the positives, if you see any in it, suggest that there is still political will on both sides to keep diplomacy alive and not go back into this war. I'm speaking very specifically from the US-Iran perspective as you see them at this point.
No, undoubtedly, there were a lot of positives. I mean, this is the first time you had the vice president speak directly to the speaker of the Iranian parliament.
He said there was a lot of positives, but they didn't get anything accomplished. Couldn't have been too positive, my guy.
Effect is a much more important figure than the traditional speaker of the parliament would be, given a lot of the changes that have taken place in the Iranian system. The fact that the Iranians brought such a large delegation, this is the largest delegation I've ever seen the Iranians bring, and far beyond what we saw during the JCPOA talks, including the head of the central bank, which suggests that the Iranians were there thinking at least that there would be serious discussions about sanctions relief. So all of that is positive, and it's absolutely true. We're about 5 or 6 days into the 2-week ceasefire. So there's definitely time for a second, perhaps even a third round. And perhaps there is a psychological element in which neither side actually wanted to have an agreement right away, because it could give the impression that they gave in too quickly to the demands of the other side. They need to give the impression that there were some really, really hard negotiations, not just long negotiations. So it will remains to be seen as to whether there will be a second round or not. And as your correspondent pointed out, neither the Iranians nor the American side have said that there will not be a second round, but that this is the end of the talks period. But having said that, I would say, though, I think the most likely scenario, nevertheless, is that they don't come to an agreement, but they nevertheless do not go back to war in the same manner that existed before this conflict.
All right. So we got, them basically telling us that the peace talks were, or the peace negotiations was unsuccessful, guys. We blame it on Iran, and then Iran turn around and blame it on us. Iran blames the U.S. after failed peace talks in Pakistan, failed to gain the trust. All right, let's go.
The Armed Services Committee. Senator, thank you so much for being here. I want to just get your reaction first to what you heard this morning from the president and also from the Israelis just moments ago.
Well, this has been a half-century struggle with Iran, as you know, Jackie. This is any expectation this was going to be solved completely in 38, 39 days, I think was always going to be misplaced. But we've seen more progress in the last month than we've seen in that half century. And right now we're in the strongest negotiating position we've ever been as a nation. Iran has no navy, no air force, no functional ability to further project power and terror. We're going to see spasms of violence, of course, come out of them. They still have some, isolated strike capability, but structurally their ability to destabilize the region the way they have for the last half century is impaired. So we've walked away from the table.
Guys, we are 20 likes away.
I think, Frank,
we are 20 likes away from 100, guys. If you haven't double tapped that screen, double tap the screen. That's how you hit the like button. It helps out the channel, guys. Double tap that screen if you have not. We are 20 likes away from 100, man. I need 20 more of y'all to double tap that screen or click the 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, guys. Most definitely, if you have a channel shutter live, let them know that we disclosing all the information on what's going on in Iran with the peace talks, with Trump, with Trump and the Pope. It's crazy. Trump into it with the Pope, guys. When has that ever happened? That's a first.
Frankly, that was to be expected. It was unlikely we were going to reach a deal in one negotiating session after 40 days of conflict. but we're in the best position possible. The president is clearly deciding we're going to take control of the strait, which, quite frankly, we should have a long time ago. The world has long taken advantage of freedom of navigation of the world's oceans, which were secured by the Royal Navy for centuries, the U.S. Navy for the past century. They've taken that for granted, and now we're realizing that freedom of navigation in many places around the world, from Straits of Malacca to the Panama Canal to the Straits of Hormuz, is a luxury that has driven our 20th century and 21st century economic growth. Now what we're seeing is folks need to remember that the American Navy is the only thing that stands between freedom of navigation and free global trade and chaos, as we've seen just in the last month. So closing the strait was not a power play by Iran, it was their only play. That was essentially their version of going nuclear. They did so. We're going to undo that here. We're going to demine the strait if there is any. We're going to make sure that trade can freely flow through there, but it's going to take probably a few weeks of intensive clearing operations and security operations from our Navy to make sure that happens.
You know, the president made the point that Iran never held up its end of the ceasefire agreement by not reopening the strait. He has suggested that, you know, the ceasefire could fall apart at any moment. The U.S. military is locked and loaded, ready to finish off Iran at the appropriate time. Do you want to see those hostilities resume immediately?
Well, of course not. We don't want to see any hostilities resume ideally, but the truth is any agreement with Iran is always going to be tentative. Look at the JCPOA from 2015. I mean, that's been a
man, John, James, y'all trip me out when y'all say that. It's people that still watch CNN. It's people that still watch Fox. After over time of doing this, y'all don't trust any news at all. It don't matter if it's CNN. It don't matter if it's Fox. It don't matter if it's MSNBC. To y'all, if it's not agreeing with what y'all wanted to be saying, then it's fake news and not credible and this, that, and the third. Man, get off the gas, man. Get off the boo-boo. You know what I'm saying? Information is information no matter where you get it from. I look at the news as a way to spark the mind, to let you know, they're going to tell you what they want you to know. You know what I'm saying? It's up to you to go deep dive into it and find out what they're not telling you. But as far as being a good news source, as far as putting information out, to let you know that there's something going on, they're great at that. All news stations are great at that. They may only put forth what they want you to know, but they most definitely let you know something is going on. So with y'all that keep on coming in my chat day after day talking about, oh my goodness, you watch CNN, oh my goodness, you watch Fox, oh my goodness, you watch MSNBC, oh my goodness, you watch ABC, man, get out of here. Ain't nothing good enough for y'all ever. James, get off the boo-boo, man. Get off the boo-boo.
Joke. That's empowered them to where they should be, where they've gotten today. We never should have signed that agreement, and we have to be realistic and clear-eyed about sitting down at the table with a murderous terrorist regime that never honors what it's going to do in the first place. So I think there'll be multiple more negotiating sessions to come, whether it's in person or remotely or through intermediaries. But right now, the focus needs to be the strait. It needs to be continuing to ensure that the remaining leadership of Iran, whoever they are, I'm sure it's multiple factions. I don't think they have a singular designated point of contact. I think what they do have is competing factions now to figure out who's going to actually end up in control of the country. And of course, Jackie, that's a part of this that isn't really being thoroughly reported, is the fact that it's very likely we have several factions, probably not just one or two or three. We probably have several factions throughout Iran now competing.
Already, MJS, I'm going to give y'all sides.
And I think it'll be interesting to figure out at the negotiating table which faction is actually represented and whether they have the true authority to negotiate on behalf of what's left of the Iranian government.
Yeah, to that point, it was just, a few days ago, the 8th, that the president said the U.S. will work closely with Iran, which we've determined has gone through what will be a very productive regime change. Doesn't seem like that regime change has materialized into anything useful for the U.S. Meantime, the Iranians are blaming the U.S. for this impasse, saying that the U.S. ultimately failed to gain the trust of the Iranian
delegation. Thank you, Rika.
The president's made very clear that the Iranians want money and they want a nuclear weapon. But there had been some analysts ahead of the ceasefire that were skeptical about the strategy, saying stopping fighting might make it more difficult domestically for the president to pick it back up again if necessary. Do you think that that's a challenge at all?
Well, of course, this is the challenge. I think it's important to remember we've had 6 presidential administrations who've been grappling with this incredibly difficult challenge of Iran, and how do we deal with Iran, and how do we unwind this ball of twine here that's incredibly complex, that's woven into the entire region and by extension the globe. And I think we have to credit President Trump for actually trying to take this on and deal with it head on instead of kicking it to a fourth generation of America. 3 generations of Americans are dealing with this problem. And frankly, the can has been kicked time and time again. And whether that's through bribery or just ignoring it, pretending it doesn't exist, President Trump says, I'm not going to leave office and I'm not going to pass this problem on to a fourth generation of Americans. So
how do you
I think it's going to take some time and space here to unwind this.
But how do you and your colleagues in Congress deal with this, realistically speaking? You know, Congress heads back and they're teeing up votes, war powers votes in both chambers. You have some vulnerable Republicans who are in purple districts. You know, big portions of their constituencies have soured on this. And the margins are in such a place that, you know, it's not impossible to think that it could pass.
Well, it certainly could. And of course, that is the constitutional power of Congress to pass these resolutions. I, of course, will be voting against it. I think many of my colleagues as well realize that this is an incredible threat and challenge to America and the free world that has been allowed to fester for a half century. And we now have a position with the Iranian government where they are the weakest that they have ever been since this regime came to power. And it's time we finish the job. So my hope is those resolutions do not pass. I'll be voting against them because we need the time and space for the president, the military, and his team to finish this job, to make sure the Iranian regime can no longer spread terror around the world, can no longer hold the world hostage. And let's not forget, Jackie, again, something that's underreported here is the role that Iran plays in empowering China and Russia. These rogue satellite states act as attack dogs for Chinese global ambitions and Russians as well. So this isn't just a Middle East problem. This is a global problem. The vast majority of Iranian oil that is sanctioned by the West is sold to China and other Asian countries, primarily China. They power their economy off this cheap oil. So by ensuring that this regime can no longer flood rogue states with cheap discounted oil and weapons and drones and proxy terror groups to destabilize regions and harm the U.S., we are not just dealing with the Iranian problem. We're dealing with a global instability problem.
Yeah. All right. Senator Tim Sheehy, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure talking to you, sir. Hope to see you again.
All right. So we found out, why Iran is blaming us for this whole entire failed peace talk, in so many words. All right. So I've been telling y'all this whole time about Trump getting into it with the Pope, guys. Let's see what Trump had to say regarding the Pope. Check this out.
13th, and this is what you need to know. Let's get right to the big story. After peace talks failed, President Trump is going after Iranian oil revenue, ordering the U.S. military to block ships from entering or exiting Iranian ports. Iran says any military vessel approaching the Strait of Hormuz would be a violation of the current ceasefire, threatening that they would be dealt with severely. Iran says there was a standoff on Saturday with a U.S. destroyer.
You must alter course and go back.
Coalition warship 121, engaged in transit passage. No challenges attended to you.
Overnight, President Trump posted that any Iranian who fires at peaceful vessels will be blown to hell.
Oh, man.
It's the Iranians who are violating the ceasefire. Also posting, we're not going to let Iran make money on selling oil.
See what I'm saying? Yeah, man. He said any Iranian that touches a peaceful ship will be blown to hell. Them was Trump words.
No challenges attended to you.
Overnight, President Trump posted that any Iranian who fires at peaceful vessels will be blown to hell, insisting it's the Iranians who are violating the ceasefire. Also posting, we're not going to let Iran make money on selling oil.
And remember, their promise was that they were going to open the Hormuz Strait. They didn't do it. They lied.
This after Vice President J.D. Vance and Iranian negotiators emerged from 21 hours of talks in Pakistan with no deal. Vance says Iran would not commit to giving up its nuclear program. Iran's foreign minister claims Iran engaged in good faith, but encountered maximalism, shifting goalposts, and blockade.
The Iranians cannot afford to lose 2 million barrels a day of oil revenue. So the U.S. is going to give the Iranians a couple days to think about it. Do you really want to call the U.S.'s bluff and attack U.S. forces and restart this war?
Martha Raddatz is in Islamabad.
The president has...
I don't think Iran really cares. They said they fighting to the end. They say Trump got them messed up.
Repeatedly said we have already won this war. And while tactically this has been seemingly successful, Iran's effective closure of the strait in response and what that has done to world oil prices has given them a huge bargaining chip and added growing pressure for the president to end the war.
President Trump launched an extraordinary attack on Pope Leo overnight. He called the first American Pope, quote, weak on.
All right, so this is what Trump had to say regarding the Pope, guys. Yeah, I told y'all he into it with the Pope, and the Pope most definitely responded. I didn't know this, but I found out that Pope Leo is one of the first popes to be from America. He's the United States. You know, basically he's from America, and now he's the Pope. I didn't know that.
Extraordinary attack on Pope Leo overnight. He called the first American Pope, quote, weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. This is after Pope Leo had said a delusion of omnipotence was fueling the US-Israeli war with Iran, and that the president's threat to wipe out Iranian civilization was truly unacceptable. Trump posting, I don't want a pope who criticizes the president of the United States because I'm doing exactly what I was elected in a landslide to do. And that quote, Leo should get his act together as Pope, use common sense, stop catering to the radical left, and focus on being a great Pope.
Whoa!
A politician. He also posted this image on Truth Social. And
this has the internet in an uproar today, guys. I seen it on a couple of channels. And I basically seen it on my Instagram as well. Trump posted an AI, basically an AI picture with him as, you know, basically Jesus, guys. Yeah, they don't like that. They don't like that. You know what I'm saying? Hey, let me tell y'all, people do not like this right here. You know, the fact that he did this, people do not like this. Yeah, this is Trump posted this as well. Man, y'all make sure y'all double tapping that screen, guys. Double tap the screen if you have not. We are like 8 away from having 100 on that like button. Double tap the screen, guys, on your mobile device. If you're on a mobile device, simply double tap the screen or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. We need 100 on the likes, guys. Get the likes up. But yeah, Trump posted this picture with him basically as God, and you see him healing the sick man or the wounded man on the bed. Let me tell y'all, he got a lot of backlash about this.
He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapon so they can blow up the world. Now, I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.
He's not a fan of Pope Leo.
I do not look at my role as being a politician. I don't want to get into a debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing. And I will continue to speak out against war, looking to promote peace, promoting dialogue and multilateral relationships among the states, to look for just solutions to problems. Too many people are suffering in the world today. Too many innocent people are being killed. And I think someone has to stand up and say, there's a better way to do this.
Also breaking overnight, one of the leading candidates for governor of California is out of the race. Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell says he's suspending his campaign. This is after accusations of sexual assault and inappropriate conduct by 4 women, according to the San Francisco Chronicle and CNN.
Oh, he's under fire.
Have not yet commented, but he previously denied the allegations and questioned their timing. Republicans say they plan to force a vote this week to expel him from Congress, with some Democrats already saying they'll calling him to resign his seat. Bahamas prosecutors face a deadline today, charge Brian Hooker in connection with his wife's disappearance in the Bahamas or release him. The Michigan man insists he's innocent, saying his wife Lynette fell off their small boat and was swept out to sea. Hooker,
man, I don't know if y'all seen this story right here, but this is a very crazy story, guys. I think they went on vacation or something like that, and his wife wound up going overboard. And they basically saying that he is the one that put her there. I'm just saying, man, I keep up with a lot of stories. I might need to go to this one later on, you know, and we do a little deep dive on this whole entire situation, on the situation that took place in the Bahamas, guys.
Has been questioned for hours by police.
If you have not located the person, how can you say that harm was caused to the person? And if you have not discovered a body, how can you say whether or not foul play was involved, which led to death?
One of President Trump's closest European allies, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, has lost his bid for re-election in a landslide. The EU described his 16 years in power as an electoral autocracy, during which he weakened judicial independence, restricted press freedoms, and rewrote the constitution to benefit his party. He was Vladimir Putin's closest ally in Europe, often standing in the way of aid for Ukraine. Vice President J.D. Vance visited Budapest last week to try and help him win. But now a former Orban ally, Peter Magyar, is set to take over. He told a cheering crowd that truth prevailed over lies. Artemis II's crew is now safely back on Earth. They arrived back at NASA headquarters in Houston to a hero's welcome over the weekend. This image of an inflatable green alien aboard the USS Merthyr went viral. A sailor brought it on board for some laughs. And now NASA is looking ahead to Artemis 3, which is set to launch in 2027, and Artemis 4, planned for 2028, which is aimed at landing astronauts on the moon's south pole to assemble a gateway lunar.
So it seems like we're making our way back to the moon, guys. We went around it this time with Artemis. They saying the next one, Artemis 2, is going to land on the south poles, guys. Are you guys ready to go to the moon? I know a lot of people feel like we never been there, but hey, man, it looks like Elon Musk and them is going to make sure we actually go there if we never been.
Space station. We have much more what you need to know.
All right, we're going to stop there right there. I just wanted y'all to hear basically what they had on Trump in the Pope. The Pope most definitely continues to talk. You know, this is more on what Trump said about Pope. You know, the Pope pushed back. He had some words for old Trumpy Trump.
Very new front that the president of the United States is now taking his fight to, taking on the Pope. And Pope Leo is responding. A statement that no Pope has ever made before, or quite frankly, ever has had to make before. The Pope saying this morning that he has, quote, no fear of the Trump administration after President Trump went after him, as if Pope Leo were just any other politician, saying the pontiff was, quote, weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. Here is Pope Leo's message.
The message of the church, my message, the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers. I do not look at my role as being a political politician. I don't want to get into a debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing.
And Pope Leo is like one of the first American popes, guys. So he's actually from America. He speaks good English. That's his first tongue. And people are basically speculating that some of the things that he has to say come through so clear, you know, basically with him being American, that's why Trump is upset, you know, because he's basically able to understand, you know, the words that are coming out of this Pope's mouth with him being an American, guys.
And I will continue to speak out loud against war.
So as Elena Train is at the White House for us to start us off. This is quite a way to start a Monday, Elena.
Absolutely. I mean, a remarkable statement and comments you're hearing from Pope Leo XIV this morning. And they come, Kate, in response to the president issuing sharp criticisms against the first American Pope. He had called the Bishop of Rome, quote, weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy, while also claiming that Pope Leo would not have been selected if it was not for the president himself. Now, we later saw Trump double down on...
So Trump says he's responsible for Leo being the Pope in the first place. Oh, wow.
In person while speaking with reporters last night before posting an AI-generated image of himself that essentially...
Thank you, Money Mo, for that 10. You know what I'm saying? Thank you. She said, salute my favorite blogger, positive energy and vibes already. Thank you, Mo.
Him looking as if he were Christ the healer. But I do want you...
Here go that picture again. I told y'all, man, it's a lot of people that are upset about this picture that Trump, you know, basically posted with him in the place of Jesus or whatever, you know, basically healing the sick and things of that nature. They don't like this. They do not like this picture, guys.
Go listen to what we heard the president say last night.
He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime. He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapon so they can blow up the world. Now, I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.
I'm not a fan of Pope Leo. Look, just to give you a little context here, we had heard the Pope weigh in. I think initially he was, trying to refrain from criticizing the president or the Trump administration directly, but we have seen him become far more vocal when criticizing the U.S. war with Iran. Last week, he condemned the president's rhetoric, specifically after we saw President Trump issue that threat that a whole civilization...
Money Mo, I don't know what's wrong with Trump. I was just in shock. I'm like, man, Trump into it with everybody, including the Pope. Y'all may have, but me personally, I haven't seen any other president basically get into it with the Pope. I think Trump is the first one.
Would die tonight. Now, I want to give you a little context as well. It's very interesting, and what I'm going to be watching for is what the 53 million Americans who are Catholic, who identify as Catholic, I would also say, put that in another number that's known as 20% of the voting public, remains to be seen what their reaction to this will be. Same with, I would note, among those, 53 million Americans, that includes the First Lady Melania Trump, the Vice President J.D. Vance, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, all of them as well identify.
Another thing I'm gonna have to touch on, I'm glad she said Melania's name. Melania basically came out the other day and basically downplayed her relationship or knowing of Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know if a lot of y'all caught that, but she most definitely did like a speech where she denied any kind of involvement with Epstein, which had a lot of people fired up. She got a lot of backlash. People didn't even understand why she came out and even spoke on that whole entire situation. But that's another story for another time. But I'm just letting y'all know that most definitely took place.
As Catholics, so just a remarkable, I think, war of words that we're seeing between the president and now having Pope Leo XIV respond this morning.
After the president criticized the Pope's anti-war stance and said he did not like him, the Pope this morning said he's not afraid of the Trump administration. And then reportedly, when asked about a True Social post, he pushed back saying, quote, "It's ironic. The name of the site itself. Say no more." Let's get to CNN Vatican correspondent Christopher Lamb, who is traveling with the Pope. You were in Algeria. You were on that plane where those extraordinary comments were made. What did you hear?
Well, John, it was extraordinary and very strong comments from Pope Leo. Of course, I was among a group of journalists who traveled with the Pope to Algeria. He came to the back of the plane as his custom, and he was asked about Trump's Truth Social.
The Pope say, "I have no fear of the Trump administration." But is they trying to put fear in people's heart? The Pope say he ain't worried about it.
Post that extraordinary broadside against Pope Leo, and he had a consistent message that was, "I'm not a politician. I don't want to get into a back and forth, but I'm going to continue to speak out." And he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Here is some more of what Leo had to say on board the plane.
I have no fear that neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loud the message of the gospel. That's what I believe. I am called to know what the church is called to. We're not politicians. We're not foreign policies. Also, with the same perspective that we might understand. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is the message of the peace. Thank you very much for clarifying.
All right, so MJS in the chat says, "Man, I keep telling you, the Pope is from Chicago. He don't give a damn about no Trump." Hey, man, he say he ain't scared of him. I believe him. I believe you, MJS. Yeah, he bought none, fade him out. He say, man, Trump and them gonna have to come harder than that.
Well, John, Pope Leo has in recent days been much more outspoken about the war in the Middle East and in Iran in particular. And as Pope, he is something of a counterweight diplomatically, spiritually to President Trump. Of course, Leo is the first American Pope, and he was addressing some of us reporters today in English. His words are clearly cutting through to the president who launched that extraordinary attack.
See, y'all thought I was playing. I told y'all, the fact that that Trump can understand what he is saying because the Pope is American, so his words are coming through very clear. And when he talks about Trump can understand exactly what it is he's saying. That's why Trump is on his neck, you know what I'm saying, firing him up because he don't like the words that the Pope got to say when it comes to him.
It seems that Pope Leo is unperturbed, unafraid, and continuing to speak out for peace as he has as he arrived here in Algiers for the first part of a 4-country tour of Africa. John.
So, Christopher, with Pope Francis before him, Pope Leo's predecessor, occasionally you would have the president and the Pope speaking past each other with vague, veiled references. I don't know if it's because English is the first language for Pope Leo. This seemed to be
It most definitely
more of a direct response to the president's words that I feel like I have heard before here. Is there a reason for that? And what more do we expect from Pope Leo on this trip to Africa?
Well, I think it is partly to do with the fact that Leo is an American and he has English as a mother tongue. And, you know, I spoke to Leo, asked him a question just before Easter about a message he had for President Trump. And Leo said to me he hopes President Trump finds an off-ramp to end the war in Iran. You know, I think what we're seeing here is a clash between a pope who wants to communicate this message of peace, of bridge building, of trying to build relations between faiths, between Christians and Muslims. He's here in Algeria, in a predominantly Muslim country. And so I think the stark contrast between the first American Pope and the US president at this time couldn't be stronger. And of course, it was viewed for decades that it was impossible for the cardinals to elect an American Pope. Why did they change that? Well, partly because of the election of President Trump. And that is part, I think, of some of the conflict and back and forth that we've seen today.
Joining me now to discuss, Christopher Hill, the publisher of the Letters from Leo Substack. Thanks so much for being here, as this story honestly is continuing from overnight. Can we talk about what you just heard from Pope Leo just there, where he said some things I expect to hear, blessed are the peacemakers, but I also heard him say that he doesn't believe he is political. Is that fair, given how he's been talking?
Yeah, I think that what he always has been very clear on is, if you look at the gospel, Jesus tells us that the God's domain stretches everywhere. And so he's only touching politics where it touches core gospel values. And the core gospel value that touches here is peace. Jesus Christ, the risen from the dead, his first words to his apostles are, "Peace be with you." Pope Leo XIV, those were his first words to the faithful. It's the core of his identity, is to be a messenger of peace. He sees this war as unjust, unprovoked, immoral, illegal. So this is why he's speaking out. He's speaking in a language that Donald Trump clearly doesn't understand, but any Catholic, any Christian understands why this Pope is speaking so clearly on this issue.
Now, you're saying any Christian, but there is a Christian right now who is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and here is how he has been talking about the war and strikes against Iran in the last couple of weeks. I want you to respond on the other side of this.
Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Pour out your wrath upon those who plot vain things and blow them away like chaff before them.
Pete using words straight out the Bible.
Wind. Give them wisdom in every decision, endurance for the trial ahead, unbreakable unity, and overwhelming violence of action against those who deserve no mercy. May Almighty God continue to bless our troops in this fight.
Can you talk a little bit about this? I know Hegseth is a follower of Doug Wilson, who's an evangelical pastor who believes, among other things, about repealing women's right to vote. But can you talk about this, how he's been approaching it in language and tone?
I think that Pete Hegseth's gospel or Bible ends in the Old Testament. He never seems to invoke the New Testament, the message of peace, the message of Jesus. And I think that what's remarkable is you talk about Doug Wilson. You're right. There is an evangelical versus Catholic divide on how to approach a lot of these issues. Doug Wilson, who was invited to speak at the Pentagon on February 14th, has a very low view of Catholicism. He said just last month that he would want to ban public expressions of the Catholic faith in American life. And so it's remarkable to me that this man is leading our troops, that he has these advisors close to him that are so clearly anti-Catholic. We know on Good Friday, for the first time in at least 40 years, there was no Catholic service for Pentagon workers on Good Friday. So it seems that the Catholic Church, once again, is being marginalized in this administration, and I would argue being attacked in this administration.
Now, I know you're among the progressive voices in this church, and it's an interesting moment when I look at those cardinals who were on 60 Minutes last night, talking about what they see as the role of the church. And here is where they were commenting even on the social media feeds, right, coming out of the Pentagon, describing it as a kind of gamification of war.
We're dehumanizing the victims of war by turning the suffering of people and the killing of children and our own soldiers into entertainment.
You called it sickening.
It is sickening to splice together movie cuts with actual bombing and targeting of people for the purposes of entertainment is sickening. This is not who we are. We're better than this.
How is the first American Pope changing the American Catholic Church?
I think it's remarkable. He's saying similar things to Francis, but Francis was oftentimes marginalized by more conservative voices in the episcopacy of the bishops in the United States, with basically the idea was he's from Argentina. He doesn't understand us.
It's crazy. How you go against the Pope?
He's from a different world. He doesn't understand the American people. You cannot make the same argument for a man born in suburban Chicago. And so I think what's happened is that there's been a shift among the episcopacy in the United States under Leo the 14th. They realize that Leo's not going anywhere. He understands the United States. He has his priorities, and he expects the bishops to carry that message forward. One final note. It takes a long time to get your people in place. Francis was Pope for 12 years. During the first Trump administration, we didn't hear as much pushback because his people were not yet in place. These are Francis bishops. These are Leo bishops who now are in the highest echelons of the Church of the United States, and that's changing everything.
That's crazy, guys. I don't know how you go at the Pope, guys, but it ain't over. More words on what's going on between Trump and the Pope.
His fight too, taking on the Pope. And Pope Leo is responding, a statement that no Pope has ever made before, or quite frankly, ever has had to make before. The Pope saying this morning that he has, quote, no fear of the Trump administration after President Trump went after him, as if Pope Leo were just any other politician, saying the pontiff was, quote, weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. Here is Pope Leo's message.
The message of the church, my message, the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers. I do not look at my role as being a political politician. I don't want to get into it.
How you get into it with the Pope, man? This is crazy.
Debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing. And I will continue to speak out loud against war.
Soon as Elena Train is at the White House for us to start us off. This is quite a way to start a Monday, Elena.
This might be the one we've already watched.
Statement and comments you're hearing from Pope Leo the 14th this morning, and they come, Kate, in response to the president issuing sharp criticisms against the first American Pope. He had called the Bishop of Rome, quote, weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy, while also claiming that Pope Leo would not have been selected if it was not for the president himself. Now, we later saw Trump double down on comments in person while speaking with reporters last night before posting an AI-generated image.
Yeah, this is the one we already seen that one. So Trump and the Pope are most definitely into it, guys. They are most definitely into it. All right. So here is Trump on what's going on in Iran, guys. He's saying that the U.S. Navy will do a full blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, guys. You know what I'm saying? Here's more of that. They got Trump on the phone. So this is like an exclusive, hearing what's going on right now in real time from President Trump. Let's go.
And we begin this Sunday morning with breaking news on the war in Iran. President Trump announcing moments ago a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is beginning. Coming up in moments, President Trump will join me in an exclusive interview to give us the very latest on the war on Iran, as high-level talks between the United States and Iran have concluded with no deal. It was the first direct talks between the two countries in a decade, and the highest level talks between the two since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. The talks beginning on Saturday and lasting 21 hours in Islamabad, Pakistan. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Pakistan leading the U.S. delegation.
and
along
got
with Jared
absolutely
Kushner,
nowhere.
Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, as a fragile ceasefire has been underway between the two sides since Tuesday, after President Trump agreed to give Iran 2 more weeks to open up the Strait of Hormuz or face further destruction. Now the president will implement a naval blockade on the strait. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance after the talks in Islamabad this morning.
Islamabad.
We've been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
Joining me now live on the telephone with the very latest is the nation's 45th and 47th president
So here's
of the
Trump.
United States, President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for being with me this morning. I know that your time is limited, and we appreciate you making the time to explain all of this to our audience. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Marie.
Mr. President, can you explain to us what is going on right now with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, we're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon. And we had meetings yesterday. They, as you said, lasted 21
She
hours.
has Trump on the phone, guys.
Very, very good representatives, as you know, JD and Steve and Jared. So we were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons. Most countries shouldn't be allowed to have, but that country will not have nuclear weapons.
So, Mr. President, was that the red line there? Can you explain to us what went on in these talks? What did the United States ask of Iran, and how did they react?
Well, they reacted, it was very interesting. It started off weak. They came in like they had the cards, but they don't have the cards. Their army and their whole military is obliterated. The whole place is obliterated. And, as you know, levels of leaders are gone. They're literally gone. Khomeini's gone. The whole thing is gone. The whole place is gone.
And he ain't lie about that. The U.S. did take out a lot of the Iranian top officials, guys. He ain't lying about that.
One thing that they can do, they can say, well, gee, we're going to put a mine someplace just a mine. We'll drop 1 mine, 2 mines, 10 mines. And that will, if you have a ship that costs $1 billion, you say, well, I'd prefer not getting whacked by a mine, losing my ship, or damaging it badly, at least. And so that's a little bit of a thing that they can do. That it's military might and military power don't do it, but, it's extortion. And they're extorting the world. We don't get our oil from them. We have so much. We have, and one thing you said, I don't know if anybody heard it well, but we have boats pouring up to the United States. They'll be filling them up, and they'll be leaving, and they're going to be packed with the best oil you can get. Light, sweet, crude. They're going to have the best oil that you can get. But so that's interesting, and it's great because we have a lot of oil. We don't get any. I mean, literally last year was 1%. We did that as a favor. We don't need this strait. But other countries do. And I will tell you, while we're on the subject, we're very disappointed with NATO. Very, very disappointed that they didn't come. Now they want to come and they want to help with the strait, and it won't take long to clean it out. So we're going to clean out the strait, and they'll be able to use the strait in not too long a distance. But we had a very intensive negotiation, and toward the end it got very friendly, and we got just about every point we needed, except for the fact that they refused to give up their nuclear ambition. And that's the only point, frankly, to me. That was the most important point by far.
And I want to ask you about...
So this is Trump giving the play-by-play for y'all who are just now entering. She was able to get Trump on the phone. He most definitely gave updates about what's going on with Iran, guys. So this is President Trump in his own words, guys.
That, and I will get to NATO as well. But, Mr. President, you wrote on Truth Social this morning saying that we will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. And at some point, we will reach an all being allowed to go in and all being allowed to go out basis. Right. So tell us what you're trying to accomplish with this blockade,
all in,
sir.
All out. Yeah, it's called all in and all out. There'll be a time when we'll have them all come in and all come out. But it won't be a percentage. It won't be a friend of yours, like a country that's your ally or a country that's your friend. It's all or nothing. And that'll be, that won't be, been too long a distance. No, we're just bringing the ships up. We got a lot of ships, so we're bringing them up. We think that numerous countries are going to be helping us with this also, but we're putting on a complete blockade. We're not going to let Iran make money on selling oil to people that they like and not people that they don't like or whatever it is. It's going to be all or none, and that's the way it is. And it'll be, you saw what we did with Venezuela. It'll be something very similar to that, but at a higher level.
And Mr. President, you say that there may be a mine out there somewhere that nobody knows about but them, and this is world extortion. How will the United States ensure that the mines are removed in the Strait of Hormuz?
So we have minesweepers there now. We have highly sophisticated underwater.
I told y'all it was booby trapped. You know what I'm saying? The Strait of Hormuz has been booby trapped by Iran, guys. There's underwater mines and things of that nature. And Trump basically is telling how America, our American ships and troops are over there, trying to basically find out where they are and eliminate those mines.
Minesweepers, which are the latest and the greatest, but we're also bringing in more traditional minesweepers. And so I understand is the UK and a couple of other countries are sending minesweepers. A lot of countries don't have minesweepers. Think of it.
Let me say this, guys. Make sure you're double tapping that screen. That's how you hit the like button. It helps out the channel. Anybody that can hear the sound of my voice that has not, double tap that screen, guys. If you're on a mobile device, or click the three dots in the right-hand corner, hit that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are new. This is President Trump in his own words, basically talking about what's going on in Iran right now.
And 28 mine droppers. What country has 28 mine droppers? 28 boats to drop mines. What country? They've been completely obliterated. They no longer. So we knocked out their entire Navy. They have 158 ships. They have 28 mine droppers. Every single one of them is at the bottom of the sea. Can you believe it? We did that in 4 days. Their Air Force is gone. Their if you look, anti-aircraft, all of their radars out. Anti-aircraft is, their defensive program is all knocked out. They don't have anything. And the sad part is, I can't say this is me, we knocked out everything, including their leaders. Their military is gone, everything's gone, their missiles are down to a trickle by comparison. We knocked out thousands of missiles. We knocked out hundreds of places where the missiles are built, different parts. They're pretty much gone. Probably they say 85, 82%, 85%, who knows what it is, but we knocked them out. We knocked out where they make the drones, and the drones are less effective now. And also we have new machinery to kill the drones. You saw that. The computerized bullets, they call it. And also lasers. The laser melts the drone. It's a beautiful thing to see. So we have a lot of stuff. But think of it. We win this thing conclusively. Even yesterday they were saying that was a complete obliteration. And when you read the New York Times, you think they're doing well. Oh, they're fighting very hard. It wasn't a hard battle. This was a very easy battle militarily. But when somebody says, we're going to drop a mine in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, not much you can do to persuade a ship owner that has $1 billion ship that we're going to take a trip up the strait. Now, yesterday, you probably saw, we sent 2 highly sophisticated, beautiful, brand new destroyers right through the middle of the strait. And nobody did anything to us, because what we do is we follow the weapon back. So it follows back, and it knocks out the people on the other side. Literally within 3 minutes, they're knocked out. The technology is unbelievable. But we don't know whether or not they do, whether or not they didn't talk about it yesterday. My inclination is to have a few. And I will tell you, it was a good meeting yesterday, really a good meeting, except for one problem. And it's 95%. They want to have nuclear weapons. It's not going to happen.
And this is a key point, Mr. President. For those people out there who have not been following it as closely, can you explain to those people why it was critical for the United States to go into Iran? Can you articulate what was behind that move that was so important for the U.S. to go into Iran?
Yeah, so easy. The easiest question you've asked me so far. They can't have nuclear weapons. They have nuclear.
So Trump throughout this whole thing is saying that Iran, basically is trying to create a nuclear weapon. And Iran says that's not true. What do y'all think, guys? Do y'all think that Iran is really trying to create a nuclear weapon? Because from my understanding, what I've heard a lot of people say is that people have been saying this for the last 50 years and they have not created one yet. But hey, who's to say that with technology advances, that they haven't got it together now? But I just want to know how y'all feel about it. A lot of people, don't believe that they were trying to create nuclear weapons, but Trump says that they are.
Want to enrich what they have. They want to enrich more.
Hey, Mother's Keeper.
As you know, we knocked out with the B-2 bombers. Had we not knocked that out, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month after we knocked out. In other words, had the B-2, those beautiful B-2 bombers, totally obliterated their 3 sites. They have 3 sites. And they are now deep in the earth with, tons of rock. Now, that material should be gotten, but we have cameras on it. We have satellites with Space Force. That was one of my beauties, Space Force. So important. But we're watching those. We're watching every single aspect of that area. They can't move without us knowing exactly what's going on. But it's deep down, and it takes a long time to get it out. It's an amazing attack. Had we not done that, they would have had, within 1 month from that date, they would have had a nuclear weapon. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it on Israel and the Middle East. Look, they went after 5 countries that were sort of neutral, I guess. I don't know how friendly they were, but they weren't in the line of attack. They dropped on UAE probably 1,800 missiles. They dropped on Saudi Arabia a lot, and they dropped on Qatar a lot. They dropped on Bahrain. They went crazy. And everyone was surprised. Actually, it was good for us because they all joined us immediately, at some point. They're either going to be petrified or they're going to join. They all joined, and they've been very helpful. All of these countries have been great, and Kuwait.
And this is the key point that I was getting to, and the reason that you feel that.
I see somebody down there say Trump is lying, guys. Trump is on the phone. We're listening to Trump as he gives his account of what's going on with Iran, guys. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you guys are double tapping the screen if you have not. We're 50 likes away from 200. Everybody double tap that screen who has not double tapped it. If you're on a mobile device, double tap your screen or click the 3 dots in the right-hand corner, hit that thumbs up. It helps out the channel, guys. And most definitely subscribe if you are new.
Not have a nuclear weapon because they will use it. And that's what I wanted you to explain to the audience.
Yeah, I think they would use it. And they'd start with Israel, and one weapon would, do damage like nobody's ever seen. Wipe it out. Conceivably big one. Not wipe it out. They don't need more than one. And then they go after the Middle East, and then they'll eventually come here, okay? And we're not letting them come here, and we're not going to let them. We have great allies over there. I'll tell you, those 5 countries, look at the Israeli relationship. Look at the incredible partnership we have on this. And, as Bibi Netanyahu said, we're the big brother and they're the small brother. And, it's been a very effective team. What we've done literally in a matter of days, within 3-4 days, Iran essentially was wiped out. And it's so sad, though, when the press says they're fighting bravely. They're not fighting bravely. They have no anti-aircraft. And we fly over there at will, can take out anything we want. As you know, last week I said we're going to strongly consider knocking out their power plants and the rest of their bridges. We took down their big bridge, but we just did that because we were having good discussions. And they go to the press. They're very good with public relations, much better with public relations than they are fighting. They go to the press and they say, President Trump said it's okay for us to have a nuclear weapon, when I never even spoke to him. And by the way, that would be the only thing I would never say to them. And they know that.
Right.
And then the New York Times, which is a fake paper. It's just a fake.
Trump, anybody ain't in his favor is fake. He calling the New York Times a fake news source. CNN, fake news source. Fox, fake news. Anybody that don't agree with him is a fake news source. Let's go, Trump.
Just believe the opposite. It's so sad when you look at CNN, the New York Times, ABC fake news, NBC fake news. When you look at their stuff, it's so sad to see it. They report things that they know are false. It's almost treasonous, actually, if you want to really know the truth.
He said they committing treason.
If you're reading the New York Times exclusively, and their circulation, by the way, is way down. Yeah. It's way down. I'm proud to report that. But if you're reading the New York Times exclusively, you would say that they are doing great in the war.
Mr. President,
And they're doing terribly.
I want to ask you about
The only thing
that.
they have is the ability to say, well, we may have some mines. And who, you know, if you have a ship, who wants to take a chance? They're not going to take a chance.
Mr. President, I want to ask you about that because you put out a tweet and it really gripped the nation a week ago when we were all waiting and watching for the United States' next move should the Iranians not open the Strait of Hormuz. And you wrote this on Truth Social: a whole civilization will die tonight.
Bam.
Be brought back.
Now, remember earlier I was telling y'all about what he said, and it was like one person who said that they seen that. It said, Trump said before this ceasefire, he said, a whole civilization will unalive tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change where different smarter and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight. One of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world, 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. That's where he put out that threat to basically demolish the whole Iran, guys. And then right after this, we had the ceasefire for 2 weeks.
Again, I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have a complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something wonderful can happen. Mr. President, you were criticized for this tweet because you said a whole civilization will die tonight. What do you want to say about that? And what can you tell us about next steps here? Are you planning further destruction?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. That statement brought them to the table, with the exception of the one thing which I believe that they're going to give up on. I believe they're going to give up on that pretty soon, to be honest, because it's not going to work. We actually thought we had them, and then all of a sudden they said, no, we want. So, but I believe, no. And when I say that, but remember, what have they said to us? For years, I've had to listen to them say, death to America, right? They say, death to America, death to Israel, America to Satan. We will destroy America, death to America. Now, does anybody ever complain to you when they say that? I think that's a big step worse. Death to America. So they're allowed to say death to America. And what I'm referring to is, when I talk about civilization, it'll be much different because their military will be totally gone. It's pretty much gone now. But their military, look at their leadership. We have had regime change because the people we dealt with yesterday were, frankly, very smart, very sharp, very good. I think they were smarter than the people from before, Khomeini and that group. Look what it got them. Look what all of their antics were spending they spent all their money on weapons. We've destroyed most of those weapons. But when I say about a civilization, it really has changed. It really has. But think of it. They're allowed to say death to America, death to this, death to... And I make one statement, they say, oh, such a big deal. Let me tell you, that statement got them to the bargaining table, and they haven't left. They haven't left the bargaining table. I predict they come back.
So Trump could have just been, punt faking in so many words with his post. What he's saying is he made that post, and that made them want to negotiate. It made them want to talk because they felt like Trump wasn't playing. Trump is basically saying, hey, if it wasn't for me saying that, we wouldn't be where we are right now with them at least even trying to negotiate with us. Was it a good move or a bad move? Y'all let me know.
And they give us everything we want. And I told my people, I want everything. I don't want 90%. I don't want 95%. I told them, I want everything.
Well, and what they
have no cards, Maria.
Yep.
They have no cards. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone, totally gone. They have nothing. They have no ships. 158 ships are at the bottom of the sea. Good ones. New. The Soleimani, they had one called the Soleimani, was taken out by one of our tiger sharks, by one of our rapidly moving submarines. It's amazing. Our military is so good. Our military is a 94% approval rating now? Well, Congress has a 14%. The media has a 12%. When I started, the media had a 92% approval rating. Now they're down to 14%. Wow. And I'm very proud of it because they're very dishonest.
Mr. President, I see what just took place in terms of our NATO allies pushing back and not supporting you and the United States. And I see what has happened with our Gulf allies in the Middle East who do not want a bully in the Middle East any longer. Are you expecting those Gulf allies to help you in this blockade in the Strait of Hormuz? Oh, yeah. What other countries are going to join that?
So the Gulf states, you could say they're much closer, so maybe they have to do it. But, they also could stay out. But they made a mistake when they started lobbing missiles at them. And here's the good thing. The Gulf states, they are rich and they have a lot of Patriots. Our Patriot missile, which is an anti-missile missile, and it's unbelievable. They fired at us one day at a certain asset that we have, namely the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, one of the beauties of the world, one of the great beauties of the world. They fired 101 missiles out of 100. These things are going more than 2,000 miles an hour. And out of 101 missiles, 101 were shot down like nothing and are now at the bottom of the sea, the remnants of them. Think of it, 101 missiles shot. In a short period of time, all 101 were knocked out. So we have the greatest military equipment. We have the greatest people. We have the strongest military in the world by far, and everybody sees it, whether it's Venezuela or what we've done with Iran. And when I read, the fake news, talking about how well...
Say when he reads the fake news, guys. Come on, guys. We are 40 likes away from 200, guys. If you haven't hit that like button, which we are over 200 people, been over 200 people, most of this live stream, guys, double tap that screen if you have not. You know what I'm saying? That's how you hit the like button. If your fingers are paralyzed, have somebody else to double tap the screen of your phone or click the three dots in the right-hand corner. Hit that thumbs up, guys. Can we get 200 on the like if y'all don't mind, man? Share out the live if you have a channel. Let them know we over here, basically hearing from President Trump himself speak on this whole entire situation going on with Iran, guys. I appreciate everybody viewing. Let's continue.
Oh, Iran, they're not doing well at all. They're getting killed. I could take out Iran in one day. I could take out in 1 hour. I could have their entire energy, everything, every one of their plants, their electric generating plants, which is a big deal. And I hate to do it because if I do it, it takes you 10 years to rebuild. They'll never be able to rebuild it. And the other thing you take out are the bridges. I took out one just to show them.
Trump said, hey, in an hour, if he wanted to, he could basically wipe out their whole power grid over there in Iran, guys. He don't want to do it, but he can. That's what he said.
Because they went public with a statement that wasn't true. They admitted it. I said, I'm going to take out a bridge. And I took out a bridge. And that was the end of that. Now they've been really behaving quite well. But in one half of a day, they wouldn't have one bridge standing. They wouldn't have one electric generating plant standing. And they're back in the Stone Ages. I'd rather not do that. But I do believe they're going to come to the table on this because nobody can be so stupid.
Trump said with one word, they'll be back to the Stone Ages. Man, Trump be throwing them threats out there like it ain't nothing, guys.
As to say that we want to have nuclear weapons and have no cards. They have no cards whatsoever.
So if they do not give up that effort, is that the plan? Will you further destruct Iran?
Yeah, I will. If they don't give that plan up, yeah.
Wow.
And usually what we want to do is we'll open up the strait. But the ships are coming up to the United States.
Let's talk about that.
I've been inviting everybody. It's pretty good.
Let's talk about that, Mr. President, because you referred to a post that hundreds of super tankers are headed to the Gulf of America to buy oil and gas from the U.S. What can you tell us about that, sir?
Well, I can tell you that it used to be called the Gulf of Mexico. That's what I can tell you. Now it's called the Gulf of America because of me. One of my little things that I did.
One of his little things. Trump is most definitely a president that flexes his powers, guys. He don't mind flexing his powers.
And it's a great honor. People are so happy. You go to Louisiana, you go to Florida, you go to these states, Texas. They're so honored by it. I used to say, why is it the Gulf of Mexico when we have 93% of the frontage? And, it fronts 93% of the United States. I said, I think I'm going to change it to the Gulf of America. What a beautiful name. And I did. And I give a lot of credit to Google, because once I filed the papers, I did it, and Google Map. Once Google Map changed, you know, we did it. It was a done deal. But we had lawsuits, we won everything, and it's now the Gulf of America, which I'm very honored by.
But do you
I was
expect
thinking about-
super tankers?
Okay, I feel you down there. That may be a better way to put it. I stand corrected. Somebody in the chat says no. He flexes his lawlessness. Okay, all right, let's go.
I tell you, I was thinking about calling it the Gulf of Trump, and I decided not to do it. I think maybe it was a wise. I think that one maybe wouldn't have worked out. I'm not so sure. You'll have to tell me. But I was thinking about it's going to be called the Gulf of Trump. And then I said, you know, that's not going to play too well.
I think you're
You know I'm kidding.
You're being facetious.
No,
I know that.
will have a headline.
But
The
what
fake news will have a headline tomorrow.
oil exporters?
The fake news, he killed me with
Do
that.
you expect super tankers, empty super tankers, to go to the Gulf of America, to go to Louisiana, go to Texas?
Well, they're already coming. Well, Texas, they're going to go to Texas. They're going to go all along our shoreline. I mean, we have the biggest ports, and they're going to go. Remember this, and this is pretty amazing. This is my time. When I came into office, we were third and fourth in energy and doing exactly this, the oil and gas and other things. Now we're bigger than Saudi Arabia. Think of this, and we're bigger than Saudi Arabia. Add Saudi Arabia with Russia, and add another country in there, whichever one you want. We're bigger than all of them combined. Think of that. That's all because of Trump. And when Biden inherited that system, he changed it. Then he tried going back to it because the oil was going up. You know, you remember it was going up $7, $8, etc. But look at even now, we have to get rid of this nuclear threat. And people in our country have oil. People in other countries are getting hurt. One of the things that most amazes me, though, the strait is for Japan, where they get 93% of their oil. You know that, Japan. South Korea gets 45% of its oil. These people haven't helped us. I say, are you guys going to help? And, you know, we have 45,000 soldiers and 50,000, respectively, at those two places. 45 and 50,000 soldiers. We guard them and protect them. And when we want a little help, they don't help us. And when we wanted help from NATO, they don't help us. And we paid, I don't know if you saw, almost $1 trillion toward NATO in a very short period of time to protect them against Russia, mostly. Yeah. And then when we're there, and, you know, Biden, I wouldn't have done this. We wouldn't have had the Ukraine problem, and Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. But under Biden, it was an incompetent president. He was grossly incompetent. Look, the election was rigged. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that now. And it's all come out, and it's coming out. But under Biden, if you take a look at what happened, when he was president, that's a war that would have never happened. Russia attacking Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I ended 8 wars, including Pakistan. You know, Pakistan was great yesterday. They were the ones that really facilitated the meeting.
Right.
But they thanked it. Every time I see them, they thank me and say, we're going to have a war with India. As the prime minister said very openly to everybody, between 30 to 50 million people would have been killed. And I got it ended. I said, if you guys are going to have a war, we're not going to do any trading with you.
Well,
and believe it or not, I got it ended because of tariffs.
Shout out to the truth. The truth is out for that 10. Say shout out to used to bake pies and IGT. Thank you very much. Most definitely appreciate it. Thank you for that 10. Let's go.
The Supreme Court was not nice to me about it.
Is this all going to be enough? The blockade in the strait, the opening up capacity in the United States is this going to be enough to lower the price of oil and gas, sir?
Well, eventually it's going to be lower. No, it might not happen initially, but it's going to go down. When this is all over, look, the stock market, the Dow hit 50,000. It was supposed to be in 4 or 5 years. They said it won't happen during his term, but it'll be maybe 4 or 5 years. It hit 50,000 in my first year. You know it better than anybody. You cover it better than anybody. The S&P,
shout out to everybody in the building, man. We're 15 likes away from 200, guys. If you have not, double tap that screen or click the 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, guys. It helps out the channel. 15 more likes to 200, man. Shout out to everybody in the building. Hey, man, I'm starting a new schedule. I just want y'all to know I'll be doing the morning news on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, starting at 9 a.m. Till 11 a.m., guys. So if you like this brand of entertainment, make sure you tune in. Most definitely subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything whenever I go live, with the latest and breaking of news, guys. Once again, we'll be doing this on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., guys. Shout out to y'all.
It's 7,000 in my first year. Before my first year, you know that. And I said to myself, oh, here we go. I gotta stop this country from having a nuclear.
Moderators, make sure y'all continue to drop that in the chat so everybody knows, you know what I'm saying? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 to 11 a.m., guys.
But you want to see a stock market go down? Let a couple of nuclear bombs be dropped on us, or frankly, any place else. And you'll see a stock market that goes down. So the stock market has not gone down very much at all. Gone down a little bit, much less than I thought. And frankly, the gas hasn't gone up as much as I thought. But regardless, even if it did, we have to stop this group of people from having. And again, it was worse because Khomeini was a total, radical. I'll be nice, maniac. He was a maniac, and you can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Right. So I just have the greatest economy ever. Everything's going along, and I say, I'm sorry. I tell my economic advisors, they say, I'm sorry, fellas. We're in great shape. We have to go and take a little journey down to Iran, and we have to stop them from having a nuclear weapon. They all said, we agree.
So do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections?
I hope so. I mean, I think so. It could be, or the same, or maybe a little bit higher, but it should be around the same. I think this won't be that much longer. They're wiped out, man. They're wiped out, and you don't get a fair shake. You don't get. We need a free and fair press in this country, and I don't even know why people would do that. Why would they say how wonderful they're doing militarily? They're doing so well. The country's wiped out. We lost one airplane, and we captured the two pilots. How about we saved those two pilots?
Unbelievable.
Which no other country has the capability of doing. Usually when that happens, countries wave goodbye. They say, lots of luck, because you're going deep into, and we went 7 hours into, it was a 7-hour flight.
Yes.
To go in and get them. We had one of the roughest areas, one of the most dangerous areas in the world. And we got both of them. It was incredible.
Extraordinary. And thank God that for our military, and I know that you rebuilt the military. Now, Mr. President, before you go, it was you who did the maximum campaign against Iran in your first term. Is it going to be back to the maximum campaign? You deemed them the leading sponsor of terrorism. And I have to ask you about all of these efforts and the impact on China. What you've done in Venezuela, Iran, even your comments about Cuba. Where does that put China as you approach this meeting with Xi Jinping next month?
Sure. Well, in the maximum campaign, you can't do any more maximum. We've wiped out their whole country, essentially. The only thing left, really, is their water.
Thank you, Mo.
Very devastating to hit. I would hate to do it. But it's their water, their desalinization plants, their electric generating plants, which are very easy to hit. We can hit them. We can have them all down. And I mean, down like you couldn't have electricity for 10 years, because it takes you 10 years to build those plants from scratch. You'd never probably be able to build them again. And the bridges. So that's really the only thing. We still have some more missile manufacturing plants. We know every one of them. We will do that. We still have other things. But when you talk about maximum, I think, outside of those few things that are remaining, I think I pretty much maxed out. You are very, very violent and vicious. I don't want to have you against me. I'll tell you what you say. I think we pretty much maxed out, other than those few items. Then we still have some plants left. We had another week left to knock out the rest of the plants, but we were knocking them out fast. As far as China is concerned, China can send their ships to us. China can send their ships to Venezuela. We told them, buy from Venezuela. We have a lot of overcapacity. We'd sell them, and we'll probably sell it for even less money. I have a very good relationship with President Xi of China. We work together very well. They're paying us substantial money, as you know. We've never got money before. You know, I listened to this Gordon Chang. He has no idea what he's talking about. We have been very tough on China, tough but fair. And, you know, it's an amazing place. I have a very good relationship with China, and they've been doing my thing. You know, I put tremendous tariffs. I put 100% tariff on all Chinese cars coming in, and that's destroying Europe. They're destroying Europe because they're taking away so much business from Mercedes and BMW, etc. And we don't have any Chinese cars in our country because they would have destroyed General Motors, Ford. They would have destroyed these companies if they did it. So I put 100% tariff.
Thank you, Bobby.
And in all fairness to Biden, he allowed it to stay on, which is shocking to me. That's one of the things, about the only thing he did good, but he allowed it to stay. So we don't have the problem that they have. You know, they're having tremendous economic problems in Europe because they're being just swamped with these Chinese cars. We don't have any.
But Mr. President, just to be clear, you said the other day that any country that supports Iran and sends military equipment to Iran will face a 50% tariff if they try to bring products. Did you refer to China? Did you mean China?
Yes, and other people, but yes, China too. Okay. If we find that China, because I hear news reports, so a news report doesn't mean much to me because they're so fake. But I hear news reports about China giving the shoulder missiles, what's called the shoulder missile, anti-aircraft missile. I doubt they would do that because I have a relationship and I think they wouldn't do that. But maybe they did a little bit at the beginning, but I don't think they would anymore. No. But if we catch them doing that, they get a 50% tariff, which is that's a staggering amount.
And did you want to say anything about our NATO allies in terms of what comes next for them, given that, I mean, is it time for them to call Iran the leading state sponsor of terrorism? And what are you going to do because they did not help in this effort?
Well, NATO is shameful. I mean, I didn't go wild at it. We didn't need any help. I would actually say, you know, if you want to help, great. If you don't want to help, that's okay. And they say, oh, well, you know, would rather not, sir, would rather not. They weren't there for us, you know. If I would have done it with force, maybe I could have gotten them to come in, but they would have come in really begrudgingly, and they would have stayed way behind. Now I'm very disappointed. I mean, look at the United Kingdom. I love the United Kingdom. My mother was, as you know, born in Scotland, and love it. But Mr. Starmer, PM Starmer said, we'll send the equipment after the war is over. I said, you don't need equipment when the war is over. You need the equipment before the war starts or during the war. He said, no, we'll send it after. He made a public statement that we will send equipment after the war is over. It was that will, you know, that's a Neville Chamberlain statement. And Germany, the same thing. He said that we didn't start this war. Well, we helped them with Ukraine. It would have never happened to Vice President, by the way. We would have had to probably Russia and Ukraine, but, you know, we had an incompetent president. But Germany said, he talked all about that we demand, and strong, we demand that this war stop. But most importantly, he said, we didn't start the war. Well, we didn't start the war with Ukraine, but we helped them. I mean, Biden gave them $350 billion. I'm not giving it. I sell things to NATO, and they do what they want with it. I guess they give it to Ukraine, but I sell things at full price.
Yeah.
And we sell it to NATO, and they do what they want with it. But think of it, to make that statement after we've spent $350 billion.
Woo, that's a lot of money.
But all the statements said, no, we have to re-examine NATO because they weren't there for us. And let me tell you, and I've said this for 25 years, they weren't there for us, and they won't be there for us.
Yeah.
They weren't there for us. This is just a military operation. This is not a hard thing for us. We are so much more powerful. I rebuilt our military in the first term. I'm using it in my second term. Yeah. And we have the greatest military anywhere in the world. And now I was right with spending all that money on the military. We have the greatest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. And it's amazing what we've been able to do. You look at Venezuela. We're doing so well with Venezuela. Great time to have Venezuela. And by the way, Venezuela now is making more money than they've ever made before. And we're participating in those profits.
Right. Well, Mr. President, we want to respect your time. I know how busy you are this morning, and I know that we will have part 2 of this interview this week at the White House. So I want to thank you so much for calling in and breaking all of this news this morning, sir. I will see you this upcoming week in the Oval Office, sir. for part 2 of our interview when we discuss the broader issues and the impact on the economy, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, so when we come back on Wednesday, we'll most definitely have a whole nother interview with President Trump. But y'all most definitely got to hear him basically speak on what's going on, you know, as far as his perspective in Iran right now, guys. All right, remember I told y'all about that picture and the backlash it's got? Check this out, guys. Let's go here before we get up out of here.
Joining us now, Senator Chris Coons.
This is about that picture that Trump posted of him as basically God, guys.
This morning, as the sun has come up over Washington, D.C., and Congress returns from its 2-week Easter recess today with lawmakers facing a packed agenda. At the top of the list, of course, the war in Iran. Democrats in both the House and Senate are expected to once again push an effort to rein in President Trump by teeing up votes on war powers resolutions. Joining us now, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He's a member of the Foreign Relations, Judiciary, and Appropriations Committees. Good to have you on.
I remember I told y'all people were upset about that AI-generated picture that Trump put up there as him being Jesus or God, guys. So much so that this lawmaker is basically saying that people need to speak out against Trump's post, which is that post that I showed y'all earlier. They may show it again.
Do you think that Democrats will have any luck with their Republican counterparts as it pertains to the ongoing war with Iran?
Look, Mika, I certainly hope we will. As you just mentioned, we're coming back from an Easter recess, a recess in which President Trump opened on Easter with a hateful, angry tweet suggesting he was about to wipe out an entire civilization. And when Pope Leo, the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide, pushed back on that statement, pushed back on war and President Trump's immigration policies, as well as his conduct of this war in Iran. President Trump has escalated by personally attacking the Pope, and then shockingly this morning,
now check this out,
posting an AI-generated visual of him.
There goes that picture I was telling y'all about that Trump posted, guys. This got a lot of people of Catholic faith, of faith in general, you know what I'm saying, in an uproar, guys. They do not like this picture, you know what I'm saying? They do not like this picture, guys. So much so that you hear this guy right here saying that, hey, we should speak out against Trump. This is just not right. How dare he, you know, basically paint himself out to be Jesus or God, you know? It's crazy, y'all. But Trump most definitely did it. I guess it was for shock value, but hey, it most definitely happened, guys. Let's go.
As Jesus Christ. Mika, there's 70 million Catholics in this country. This is an overwhelmingly Christian country, but a country of faith where we respect each other, that was rooted in freedom of worship, freedom of religion. It seems to me that Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance and President Trump seem determined to secure their white Christian nationalist base and to push aside and to offend and to distance themselves from all the good people of our nation who want good things for our country and for each other. This has been a very dark chapter. And one of the things I've been struck by is the silence of so many of my colleagues on the other side. It was Martin Luther King who said the real tragedy is not the cruelty of the bad, but the silence of the good. And I'm hopeful we will hear some voices this week speaking up and saying our national leader, our president, should not be attacking one of the world's greatest religions, should not be putting himself in the space of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and of one of the most important figures in world history.
He painted himself as a god. People don't like that. You know what I'm saying? They don't like that.
Not least of which spiritual history. This is a watershed moment for those who want to stand for decency and for the values that founded our country.
I have to ask you about that silence, though, because it definitely is. And the Easter message, the picture of the president himself as Jesus Christ.
Right.
The silence on the side of your Republican counterparts, for the most part. I mean, there are, I guess, a few voices. I mean, there are some things, Senator, that don't take prep, that you don't need to discuss. Right. And I think we can put those in that category. So then how do you explain the silence on the Republican side at this turning point in history?
So over and over since Trump returned to the presidency, he's made outrageous statements. I'm going to make Canada the 51st state. I'm going to wrest Greenland away from our trusted NATO ally, Denmark. I'm going to retake the Panama Canal. Statements that have really unsettled our closest, most trusted allies and have made us less safe. And a few Republicans have really spoken up about that. I led a bipartisan delegation to Denmark, for example, earlier this year, where Senators Tillis and Murkowski joined me. And other Republican senators have stood up for NATO when Trump has gone after them. But this seems to me a whole nother level, to literally and explicitly threaten genocide against the civilization.
And which they're talking about where I told y'all, and I read y'all that post just a second ago, where Trump basically said he would obliterate the whole country of Iran. You know, he basically going to wipe them off the map, guys. This is what he's speaking to right now.
The ancient Persian civilization of Iran, and then to keep carrying out a war that Pope Leo has called an immoral war, and that is certainly a war not authorized by the American people, and where Trump changes its scope and purpose and cost from day to day. Look, the average American is going to get up today and see the price of gas go up. If President Trump thinks he's got a solution to the closing of the Strait of Hormuz by the Iranians, threatening to now fully close it using the American Navy is both risky and likely to send the price of gas and the price of daily living for Americans skyrocketing.
So, Senator, let's talk a little bit more about this blockade that the president announced after peace talks in Islamabad fell apart without a deal this weekend. You mentioned it, that the price of oil undoubtedly will go up. We're seeing it already overnight. We can see that will likely continue in the coming days. But talk to us about some other issues that you see with this, including, this is something we mentioned an hour or so back on the show, how Beijing is going to react the first time one of their ships gets stopped by an American naval vessel.
So this is the most critical vulnerability that China has, that if we were to secure control over Iran's oil exports, would give us huge strategic leverage, comparable to their leverage over us in critical minerals. But to do so would require an act of war, a naval blockade. And I don't believe we're prepared for it. I don't believe the American people have been prepared for it. I don't think our naval assets in the region are ready for it. This is an enormously risky maneuver. And I'll remind you, what comes out of the Strait of Hormuz isn't just gas, the oil that's produced, but natural gas, fertilizer, and helium. Now, why do those matter? Fertilizer is critical right now for the planting season in dozens of countries around the world. We're going to see another wave of hunger as a result of this blockade. Helium's critical to a whole bunch of advanced MRIs. Anybody get an MRI around here? And so Trump's going to skyrocket the prices for the average American and put our security at risk. And Xi Jinping doesn't face midterm elections. His ability to survive this moment and to test whether or not our allies are going to stick with us in the Western Pacific and in Europe gives him a huge opportunity. I hope and pray that we're back at the table negotiating with the Iranians this week, rather than this ongoing blustering approach by President Trump for a war of choice that he's stumbled into.
And he's at least still considering the idea of reviving military strikes, though he has not given that order just yet. Senator Coons, we also want to get your reaction. You sit on the Foreign Relations Committee, of course, about what we saw in Hungary yesterday. A remarkable win, a trouncing of Viktor Orban, which means so much for the people there, but also, I'd argue, sends a signal around the globe. It is a defeat, certainly for Vladimir Putin, and it's a defeat, let's be clear, for President Trump and his closest allies, who all went to Hungary to campaign for Orban.
He sent J.D. Vance to campaign for Orban in the last couple of days. J.D.'s had a pretty tough week, our vice president. He's got a president personally attacking the Pope. He is a recent convert to Catholicism. He went to campaign for Orban, who lost decisively. He went to try and negotiate a peace deal with the Iranians. How's that going? Millions of Hungarians responded to Peter Magyar, whose party won an overwhelming victory, because he went throughout the country campaigning on local issues. The terrible mismanagement of a weak economy and the open corruption of an authoritarian. I think there's a message in there for anyone else who's facing elections around the world, that in a democracy, average folks are looking for a better quality of life for them and their families, for improved security, and they don't like bald and gross corruption. I think there's some corollaries here for the United States in our upcoming elections.
Tim McGrath, member of the Foreign Relations, Judiciary, and Appropriations Committee, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
for coming on this morning.
Yeah, so basically they calling for action against Trump, guys, for this picture, man. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how you feel about it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what your faith is, you know, this, that, or the third. But man, this picture right here has set social media on fire, as well as the news, man. You know what I'm saying? Trump beefing in so many words with the Pope, guys. Was this appropriate? I don't know what Trump was thinking. He most definitely has been a very controversial president who does very controversial things, you know, to basically get a rise out of the public, guys. Do y'all feel like with this picture right here, he basically took it too far, guys? I think this was a direct shot at the Pope. I do. I think this was a direct shot at the Pope, man. You know what I'm saying? Trump is on a whole nother level when it comes to politics as well as the internet, guys. He knows how to set it on fire, man. You know, it's crazy, man. But yeah, he has most definitely got a lot of backlash behind this picture, guys, of him depicting himself as Jesus, man. It's crazy. I'm pretty sure y'all will see this a lot more, you know, past this channel. Yo, this is Trump. Trump posted this. You see his name at the top up there. It says Donald J. Trump. He posted this to his Truth Social page. So it most definitely came from him. He has a war of words right now with the Pope, guys. And yeah, Trump threw a big shot right here at the Pope with depicting himself as Jesus, man. We found out about the peace talks, you know, that didn't go so well in Pakistan with J.D. Vance flying out there, basically trying to negotiate with Iran. They gave him a big no burger. You know, we don't care about nothing you're talking about. They were supposed to, the Iranians were supposed to be opening up the Strait of Hormuz. They did not. They only opened it for people who agree with them or basically are on their side. We find out there's a bunch of mines, underwater mines over there, you know, that are blowing up enemy ships. It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy. But as they continue to keep me updated, I will most definitely keep y'all updated. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, man. We're going to start going live Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You know, so if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything when everything news goes live with updates and live news, guys. You know what I'm saying? That's my time. Shout out to all of my old subscribers. Shout out to my new subscribers. Shout out to all of my members, the old ones as well as the new ones. And most definitely, shout out to my moderators for keeping the chat running smooth. I know sometimes it get a little hectic down there. I most definitely appreciate y'all. Shout out as well to anybody that sent a super chat, a super sticker, or a gift to the channel, man. You know, any donation is appreciated. There's none that's too small or too large, man. If you have not hit that like button and you enjoyed the show today, make sure you double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or you can click the three dots in the right-hand corner and hit that thumbs up, man. You know what I'm saying? It's time for me to make my grand exit as usual, you know, so I'm going to do it like I always do it, man. And one more thing, y'all have a great morning, evening. You know, I'll see y'all again. I might even go live tomorrow later on because I want to talk about the Diddy situation with his possible release. I want to find out what is going on with Miss Erin Guthrie, guys. She was a big topic for a minute, but her name has most definitely fell out of the headlines here of late. I want to know what's going on with that situation, guys. You know, I also want to cover the situation with Melania Trump coming out and basically downplaying her relationship or her knowing of Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot of people that don't understand why she came out and did that anyway, but she most definitely did it, man. Those are a few topics that we're going to get to. I might get to them a little later on today. You know, later on tonight, I might go live with a night broadcast tonight, because there's a couple of things that I have been missing since I have not been live, and I feel like y'all most definitely need to know about. So shout out to y'all. Sidewalk Game, check in out. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all be safe. I'm gone, y'all.